All right, so I will be talking about how we can fight algorithmic racism in regards to text and speech in the modern era. So, an overview of my argument and kind of a roadmap to where we're going to be going. First, we're going to be starting off with discussing why exactly we need algorithms to analyze text and speech in the first place. As if we could just do this with human beings, this wouldn't even need to be a presentation. We're going to talk about the toll of hate speech in the psyche and the life of a hate speech moderator. Then we're going to move on to discussing what exactly is algorithmic racism, and then talking about the taught and trained blindness of algorithms, the really true cause of all of this. And then we're going to talk about how we can solve algorithmic racism. So first, why do we need algorithms to do this work in the first place? So online platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit are becoming some of our most prolific venues for speech and discussion and discourse when it comes to societal issues, political discourse, as we've seen with the recent events this past week with the murder of George Floyd. As such, much consideration is necessary when finding ways to protect these venues. And protecting these venues means making sure the discussion is healthy and productive. It isn't just rife with divisive, hateful content, so people can have actual meaningful discussions about the things at hand. Unfortunately, it's impractical for companies to regulate these online and social media platforms with actual people. Financially, there's way too much data, and you have to pay people way too much in order to do this. And on the mental side, which we'll get into, there are a lot of issues surrounding having people look at this content every day. So now we're going to talk about the toll of hate speech on the psyche, the mental aspect that I was alluding to earlier. So first off, viewing hate speech takes a toll on your mental health. Seeing hateful content, abusive content, disturbing content every day is not something you can separate from your psyche. It is going to have an effect on you whether you like it or not. A study done at Georgia Tech showed that exposure to hate online leads to greater stress expression in college students. The study was done at Georgia Tech among college students who were involved in Reddit communities that had hateful content. And it was shown that students that exhibited lower mental strength or mental fortitude actually exhibited stress expression after a while of looking at hateful Reddit content. So the truth is that even when you're looking at it in a recreational capacity, hate speech does have an effect on your psyche and will lead to actual expressions of stress, right? So if we're talking about college students who can decide when they want to log off of these platforms and aren't forced to look at this content all the time, you can shut your computer off whenever you want to. Imagine the effect of hate speech on a human hate speech moderator where it's their job day in and day out, 24/7, 365, to look at this content. So now to speak about the life of a moderator. So The Verge did an article about a company called Cognizant, which is an Arizona-based Facebook content moderation company that does work for them. And this is a quote describing the workplace. Collectively, the employees described a workplace that is perpetually teetering on the brink of chaos. It is an environment where workers cope by telling dark jokes about committing suicide, then smoke weed during breaks to numb their emotions. It's a place where employees can be fired for making just a few errors a week, and where those who remain live in fear of the former colleagues who return seeking vengeance. As you've probably seen from this quote, it's not a pretty work environment. It's full of stress, and these people are under extreme mental duress from all of the content that they're forced to look at day by day. This is not a pretty place to work, and it's not somewhere that I think that anyone want to work. So further on into like the logistics of the life of a moderator, right? So that was a report from employees at Cognizant. And to give you a bit of context for the compensation that these people are getting for the stress they're going under, a content moderator only makes $28,000 per year. In comparison, a Facebook employee, the median income for those people is $240,000 a year. So as you can see, both jobs are important, but the compensation placed on either one of them is very different. These employees are developing PTSD-like symptoms on the job, right? They've begun to even embrace viewpoints of videos and the memes they moderate. So people that came in normal, having normal views that weren't extreme, leave with extreme viewpoints. The actual article showed that there is a flat earther, a guy that believes that the earth is flat, a Holocaust denier, and also a person that believes that 9/11 was an inside job perpetrated by the government. These people did not believe these things prior to working at Cognizant, and this just showcases the effect of looking at terrible material ranging from people being killed on video to racial content. It's just a terrible impact on your psyche that can't be divorced. You can't go home and decide that it didn't affect you. In fact, Facebook has actually been facing a class action lawsuit on behalf of moderators who claim that they're not being properly protected or supported via mental health programs by Facebook for all of the stress that they go under. So what exactly was the result of this lawsuit? It recently got decided. Was this just a BS lawsuit that moderators brought up that had no standing or weight in court? What happened? So the result. Facebook will pay $52 million in settlement with moderators who developed post-traumatic stress disorder on the job. Current and former moderators will all be paid a minimum of $1,000 each. So as you can see, this did stand up in court and is a testament to the fact that moderating hate content with human beings, if not done the right way with the correct support, is a terrible thing for everyone involved, right? So we now understand why exactly these platforms are moving towards algorithms, both for the cost and also just for the mental toll that it takes on everyone who does this work. All right, so now that we understand exactly why we have algorithms in the first place, now to talk about what exactly is algorithmic racism. So what is it? Again, companies employ artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms as speech filters on their platforms because it is too costly and detrimental to mental health for them to use actual people. And the issue is that these machines unintentionally discriminate against Black people and others, mostly minorities, who use African American vernacular in their posts. I'm going to refer to African American vernacular as AAVE. So if you see that, that's what that means. In fact, Black people's tweets are 1.5 times more likely to be flagged as offensive than any other group. So unless you believe that Black people actually create hate content on Twitter at a 1.5 time higher rate than anyone else in any other group on Twitter, you see that there's an issue here that needs to be fixed. Now to the real problem and the source of all of this, the taught and trained blindness of algorithms, and discussing why exactly this happens. So the taught and trained blindness of algorithms. So for this, we're going to be looking at Google's Perspective AI. It's one of the most popular AIs that people use, Twitter, Reddit, a bunch of different discussion-based platforms to moderate the content on the website. This AI and others categorize African American vernacular phrases as being more toxic than other ones with similar meanings that are not written in this specific dialect of English. So to compare two statements, what's up nigga versus what's up bro, both are the exact same meaning. They're supposed to greet people, say hello, basically. Again, different cultural backgrounds and different cultural contexts, but the same meaning nonetheless. The issue becomes with the fact that what's up nigga is rated as a 97% toxicity rating in comparison to what's up bro, which gets 7%, even though these statements have the exact same meaning. But again, I could see how you're probably thinking that the first phrase contains the N-word, which might explain why it got a higher toxicity rating, even though it had a similar non-toxic intent, right? However, positive phrases spoken in African American vernacular often get high toxicity scores, even when they do not have any kind of profanity or derogatory terms embedded within them. This is an example right here. So the statement, "you in your bag, sis, you better do it, sis," basically means that you're doing your thing, you're doing a great job, you're awesome, keep it up, right? That's what it would translate to in quote unquote regular English, if you will. However, when you plug it into Google's Perspective AI, this is the interface for it. When you plug it in, it rates it as being unsure if this will be perceived as toxic. However, the 0.62 that you see right here says that if it had to guess, it's a toxic statement, which again begs us to wonder what goes into this algorithm, what goes into this AI, that a statement that means purely positive things, nothing derogatory about this, is inferred to be somewhat toxic by this AI. So here's some more examples of the results that Google's Perspective AI spits out. So this first statement is, "You are a dope ass woman," which I think that regardless of your cultural context or background, you understand is a positive statement. Again, saying basically you're amazing, you're doing your thing, right? Positive. Apparently, based on Google's Perspective AI, if you put this into a discussion, there is a 95% chance that it is looked at as toxic by other people viewing the conversation. This is approximately equal to another phrase: "You are a stupid idiot," which I think the majority of us will look at as a derogatory term meant to demean someone, right? Yes, there is a 0.03% difference in between the two, but the similarity, at least in the rating, is there. While to the majority of human beings looking at this right now, it's very confusing as to how you could equate these two phrases. So to continue on with my final example, and probably the most poignant, here is a table that a woman on Twitter made by putting in a bunch of "I am a ... statements into the Google Perspective AI and seeing the toxicity ratings that came out. So if you want to start with "I am a man," you get a 20% toxicity rating, which is weird in itself. I'm not sure why an "I am" statement at all would have any kind of toxicity, because it doesn't look like you're demeaning anybody. Then you go to "I'm a woman," where the toxicity rating jumps up 21% to 41%. The terms gay, black, or woman, and you see that again the scores jump up. And if you look at the bottom of the table, you'll see "I am a black woman" has an 85% toxicity rating, and "I am a gay black woman" has an 87% toxicity rating in comparison to the 85% rating for "I am a black woman." So as you can see, this graph is pretty disturbing and pretty hard to explain, as none of these statements outside of maybe "I am a dyke" could be explained by an AI. And the only reason why "I am a dyke will be able to be explained is because of the derogatory term used. But yeah, it's disturbing. It's very hard to explain as to why this would happen. So now time to figure out why exactly does this happen? Why do graphs like that exist? Why does adding gay, black, or woman to a phrase of an "I am" statement up the toxicity score? So the reason why this happens is that AI are trained on flawed and biased data sets. And how are these data sets created? Annotators identify posts they think are hate speech, right? They are fed a bunch of different Twitter posts where they can look at and determine whether they think that this would be likely to be viewed as hate speech by other people viewing the content in the future. They do this, they categorize all these things. The algorithms look at the correlations between what they said was hate speech and what they said were not. And then the algorithm uses those correlations to extrapolate new judgments to data that are entered into it every day via people posting on Twitter and discussion groups, and the algorithms then make judgments on that. The issue is that the annotators, when they're asked to categorize these posts, they're asked to do it with zero context. Context meaning they have no idea the race of the poster, they have no idea their ethnicity, whether they're a male or a female. They have no idea what these things are. All they see is the post. Again, like I said, the algorithm perceives correlations between what the annotators think is hate speech. It makes its own judgment. And because of the miscategorization of posts as being toxic due to this lack of context, this provides the basis for racist algorithms making mistakes and ultimately targeting Black people as perpetrating hate speech more than any other group. Now to the final point, how do we solve this? How do we solve algorithmic racism? And for me, I have two solutions: providing clarity and context for annotators, and promoting diversity in annotators and requiring transparency from companies. So again, how do we solve algorithmic racism? So the screenshot to your right is a screenshot from my own Facebook account. It shows you where I studied for college, where I'm currently studying for college, shows you where I went to high school, shows you where I live currently, and where I'm from, right? But as you can see, it has no data as to my ethnicity, even though those are probably pretty easy things to ascertain from like my profile picture, a lot of the things that I like. Right. And again, most social media websites do not ask for race and ethnicity at any point in the sign-up process for multiple reasons. Thus, we must deploy our resources to create algorithms to give annotators this racial context that these websites do not have explicit data on, right? And yes, I do understand that creating yet another algorithm to determine race is an undertaking in itself, but there has been empirical proof to suggest that when annotators, data annotators, are given context as to the race or the dialect that the poster is likely using, it's helped outcomes. Again, annotators are significantly less likely to say that African American vernacular phrases are offensive when they are provided with racial context. A study at the University of Washington had 3 conditions. Annotators were either given no context, as they are normally, or they were given the context of the likely race of the poster given to them by an algorithm created by the researchers, or they were given a dialect priming condition where it was said to them that this poster or this post was most likely written in African American vernacular. And when they assessed the results of the test, the people in the 2 conditions, the race priming condition and the dialect priming condition, were 20% less likely to categorize an African American vernacular phrase as being offensive to anyone. So although this is a mighty undertaking, there is a precedent, an empirical precedent, an objective precedent to show that these things do help. Now, the way to achieve this algorithm that I'm talking about, I think there's 2 ways that aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. I think a public monetary reward will be extremely effective for getting the best algorithm, and or targeted government investment into the area of creating socially conscious algorithms, because this is not just an issue with regards to text and speech. It's an issue with regards to facial recognition and a bunch of other areas and arenas in technology. So I do think this would be an extremely good use of money, both a public monetary reward and the targeted government investment. Second is promoting diversity within annotators, right? Because racially homogenous annotators may still fail to understand the language they analyze, even with the context of an algorithm like the one that I just proposed in the last slide. If you have the same pool of people who do not reflect the diversity of the real world, even with the fact that they know that the poster is African American, they still will not understand the context. And they have a chance to still make a miscategorization and just to propagate the same issues that we've been having over and over and over. As such, regulatory guidelines must be created to ensure that a minimum number of annotators are minorities. Companies are not going to do this by themselves. They have to be held accountable, and mandatory guidelines need to be created to make sure that the annotator pool reflects the real world. In addition, we have to require transparency from companies on this fact. Companies should be required to provide statistics on the racial makeup of their annotators and whether they were given racial context when it came to the data sets that they were training, right? Because again, the training data sets are the most important thing for making sure these algorithms have an equalizing effect and not a discriminatory effect. So the broad takeaways in my conclusion from this argument are, first, that algorithms are here to stay. As we've seen with the cases levied against Facebook and the testaments from people at Cognizant and moderators around the world, it is not a good thing for human beings to be looking at hate speech 24/7 all day without proper mental health counseling that companies are obviously not willing to pay for, as exemplified by Facebook's negligence, right? Second, the data that these algorithms use are of utmost importance. The training data that these algorithms base their correlations off of and extrapolate their new judgments from is of utmost importance. As such, annotators have to make better decisions when it comes to what they categorize as toxic and what they categorize as not toxic. And this will only happen when we give them racial and dialectic context by an algorithm that can determine one of the two. People are not going to make better decisions unless they have better information. On top of this, the pool of annotators must reflect the diversity of the real world. These algorithms that I'm proposing will be all for naught if we still have a homogeneous pool of annotators that do not understand cultural context. And finally, companies must be held accountable to these standards. These companies, as we've seen, must be kind of pulled to do these things. And unless we have a verifiable, accountable way to make sure that they're making progress in this arena, we will continue to have these issues as all of these different platforms become more and more popular. And as you can see with the recent events, protecting our platforms and creating spaces for healthy discussion is incredibly important now more than ever. So thank you all for listening, and I hope you got something from this presentation.